6:32, good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's take a look at some of today's front pages. And the Times leads on the potential shocking return to power of Boris Johnson after Liz Truss's resignation.
The Guardian says it's the bitter end with the departure of the Prime Minister after just 45 days.
The Daily Mail has Boris versus Rishi as another leadership contest is launched.
The Telegraph covers the historically short leadership of Liz Truss as Boris Johnson suggests he can save the party from electoral wipeout.
Well, it's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning is the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Very pleased to have you both with us this morning. Astonishing times. Let's start in the Times, shall we, David? This is Truss resigns, Johnson weighs return to power.
Yes, I mean, I think there are various disasters that could overtake this country, but few are worse than the idea of Boris getting back. It's interesting.
Why?
Look, Boris is a very brilliant man at what he's good at, which is cheering people up and being amusing. Boris has no visible integrity whatsoever, and he cannot run a government that has any sense of what I would call the necessary level of gravitas that you need. And I mean, I spent 11 years as a minister, and the Gardens, number 10, was a very boring place. And if I'd been out there swilling a bit of cheap Spanish wine and eating chorizo in Margaret Thatcher's day, I'd have had my ears clipped, right? I would. She'd literally have clipped my ears. Boris, it was like sort of running a Chicago speakeasy. Boris finds it impossible to actually be what a prime minister has to be in terms of presenting a properly grave face to the world and behaving with integrity. And when we had this dismal farce where the deputy chief whip in charge of party discipline was the worst groper and nuisance in Parliament. I mean, you couldn't make it up, really.
Well, he's the only one, arguably, out of any of the candidates with a mandate. I mean, in 2019, it was a huge win for him, especially in a third term for the Tory party. I mean, he is an electoral winner. Is that not what the Tories need right now?
Yeah, but at a certain point, people begin. I think at a certain point, Boris, fell off the wedding cake. He fell off the wedding cake because he had everything except the seriousness of purpose to do the job. I mean, and let's try not to forget about the fact that, he delivered Brexit on the basis all you had to do was pass an act of Parliament, and that was Brexit. But of course, that was not the end, or even the beginning of the end, to be very Churchillian. It was merely the end of the beginning, and he couldn't then get a grip and get capable ministers in who could actually do all the work that needed to be done to ensure that we maximise the benefit from Brexit. And I think the papers are therefore slightly full of this. Boris v Rishi, says the Mail, fight for the soul of the Tories. And, I mean, the Mail have always been more favourably disposed to Boris than you would expect. But I think that Boris is a bad thing because, for the Tories, because he throws dust in the eyes of others. They've got to make a fresh start. And they've got to make a fresh start with somebody who is capable of actually offering proper, assured, integrity-heavy rather than integrity-light leadership.
Ms. Kershaw.
Well, I couldn't disagree more. As you know, I've supported Boris Johnson on this programme through all the attacks he was enduring, and which I thought were petty and trivial. But the thing about Boris Johnson is he doesn't fit the mould. And, he's a rock and roll politician. He understands people. Why was he so popular? Why did people defect the Tories in their droves in places like I come from, in the, post-industrial, in-decline northwest of England? He's got that charisma. I think David hit the nail on the head and said he cheers people up. God, imagine the pandemic and the lockdowns with somebody like Jeremy Hunt, I'll say it carefully, in charge, or even Theresa May. He lifted the mood. He's a fantastic orator. Whether what the policies were right or wrong, he made the public follow him and believe in them. We were the first country in the world to get the jabs in our arms. And that was partly because he handed it over to somebody competent and she ran with it. I mean, if Boris can't select good ministers, then why are we even being offered Sunak? He was his chancellor. Liz Truss was a great trade secretary under Boris. I'm sick of being maligned. Now, whether or not it's a good idea for him to make a comeback is another matter, and mainly, I think, because what we need now is stability. And he's still having this inquiry. I think it's been led by Yvette Cooper to assess whether he broke the ministerial code. And if, say, in 3 months' time, say he became Prime Minister again, and in 3 months' time it was judged that he couldn't be forced to resign because the Prime Minister makes that decision. He could excuse himself, but it wouldn't be good.
But I'm not going to disagree with you, because I think what you say, dare I say, is what a lot of people will think. I think that isn't the problem with Boris. What he should have done is said, all this nonsense about lockdowns and all of this is a lot of, mad doctors who are actually insisting on this, and we should say no to it. Instead of which, what he did was really the worst thing you can do in a democracy. Everybody else in the country was expected to agree with these stupid rules, while he and his friends had a good old party in number 10. And it got worse than that, because there were people who obeyed what he said, who couldn't see close relatives die.
I
just think it's disgraceful that Boris doesn't have a conscience in that way.
Well, I said before in this programme, I'm not saying it to milk it, but I, of all people, should have a grudge against him then, because my mum was chucked out of an NHS hospital and put to make room for COVID patients, sent to a care home, and 2 weeks later died.
Yes.
Probably of COVID, although she wasn't tested, but she just suddenly died. So I should have a grudge against him, but I haven't, because I sincerely believe that he actually kept it lockdowns light compared to what it would have been if we'd let Whitty and co have full run. He actually fought for freedom because he's a libertarian. Don't forget he caught it himself and, spent a couple of dodgy nights in a hospital ward. Can I just say though, I don't think maybe we're jumping ahead here, I don't think he's seriously being presented as the next Prime Minister. I think this is tactical. I think it's to avoid a coronation in the Tory party, which would be, just after all the undemocratic things we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, that would just be the final nail in the coffin of our democracy. If, say, Sunak was just crowned by the parliamentary party. So, just as I suspect, and it's not an original idea of mine, that MPs voted tactically to make sure that the final 2 that were presented to members, like myself, were Sunak or Truss, because they thought Sunak would wipe the floor with her. He didn't, because people don't like somebody who stabs the Prime Minister in the back. So she wasn't the best candidate, but she won. And that was tactical by elements of the party. I think this is now a genius idea. Rather than just give a free rein to Sunak to walk into number 10, this is really stirring the pot.
This is very well put. And
yeah.
I used to love it when I was at the bar, when an esteemed colleague would make an eloquent case out of absolutely nothing, and you're doing a very good job on that.
Well, my dad wanted me to be a barrister.
You'd have made a very good barrister. The worrying thing is, you see, that Boris has always wanted to be somebody rather than do something. And I think the problem for Boris now, if he came back, he's already got the taste for the high life. If he can make $150,000, speaking a lot of, dumb Americans, why is he going to come back?
No, he doesn't want to. I don't believe he's serious about it. That's the point I'm trying to make. He likes,
But he wants to be there. He wants to be in the game. Because he can't bear anyone having a game that he's not in.
Well, if you'd been stabbed in the back by your Chancellor, wouldn't it be, revenge is best served up cold. This revenge is absolutely deep freeze temperature, because he's come back and he's standing there. He's already got more votes or pledges of allegiance from Tory MPs than Sunak. He's completely
so?
put the spanner in the way. He has. Oh, yes.
But I tell you what is, I'll be interested to know about that. But look, but the point is that Boris is not serious about this. He just doesn't want to be left out.
Is he not? Because
He wasn't serious when he was Prime Minister the first time.
But he hasn't. I mean, it's no secret that he would like to have a comeback at some point.
Boris would rather be drinking, awful Spanish wine. I can't forgive him for that, really. And, I mean, if you're going to get drink wine, you better drink.
Well, Prosecco's even worse.
Yeah, I'm not a big Prosecco man either, tell you the honest truth. But the reality is that what Boris has failed to do ever is to get to grips with the detail. But I know it was, you said, the devil is in the detail, but it is. And you feel, the thing about Margaret Thatcher, bless her heart, I mean, she was a very difficult woman. I was younger minister for 4 years, and she treated me, as I've said before, with even more contempt than my mother did. But the thing about Margaret Thatcher, nobody worked harder than she. And she was on top of the detail, even if her interpretation of the details sometimes was difficult. Boris never worked with the detail. There were boxes he never opened. And he thinks you could fly by the seat of your pants, and a quick quip and a bit of a laugh, it will compensate that, but it won't.
But the problem with this discussion, if you like, is that it's very political rather than looking at the voters. John in Blythe Valley's been in touch. Morning, John. Said there can only be two democratic options, he says. Boris, yes, because he was elected, or a general election.
But you see, that isn't, forgive me, I'm sounding pompous. Can you do something? Can you stick something up my backside or stop me being
I've got a nice sausage sandwich in my bag.
Yes, I'm being pompous. But look, at the end of the day, where was I?
I never thought I'd say that to an ex-minister.
No, we were used to having trust everywhere.
Humour is essential. You need charisma. You need a leader with charisma.
But just on this constitutional point of my lord, the point is that if there is you're elected as a member of parliament, you're elected as a member of parliament for a term. You're not tied to some bloke you happen to think was a good thing at the time of the election. You're not tied to a policy. You have a doctor's mandate as a member of parliament to do whatever you think. And this idea is so spurious that, because you were elected to support Boris, you have to continue to do so. And that is a fundamentally wrong interpretation of the British Constitution. You elect a member of Parliament, and then they're let loose on these issues, and in 5 years' time or 3 years' time, whatever it turns out to be, if they get it wrong, they're chucked out.
Oh, well.
Can I just quickly say, let's not forget the members, because at the end of the day, I know that, because my mum was a councillor for 50 years, at the end of the day, the elections are won by the members, the boots on the streets, the feet on the ground, the leaflets through the letterbox, the knocking on doors, the canvassing. The people I know in local Conservative parties will work their socks off for Boris Johnson. They won't do it for Rishi Sunak.
Except, just very quickly, when I was a member of Parliament in a marginal seat, the membership of my parliamentary party, of my constituency party, was 3,000 to 5,000, depending. The Tory party has got 160,000 members in 600-odd constituencies. So actually, there's a lot of myths about Boris, and the idea that people were all ready to turn out for Boris, I don't think they were. I think the trouble with politics these days is that people no longer want to get involved.
Well, look, talking about Boris has taken us through the Times, the Telegraph, the Sun, and the Times again. So let's have a look at the Guardian. Liz, this is the golden handshake to Prime Minister.
Well, for being Prime Minister, entitled to £115,000 to pay for, it's like back to work job scheme. So they give you this money so that you can recruit staff and buy office equipment, and you're not going to be out in the cold. You're going to be able to work effectively. So everybody who's PM is entitled to the same. It's not in the rules.
Gets 150,000, even when they're not in Parliament.
Well, I don't think when this was
that's not automatic.
When this was drawn up, I don't think they don't get it just in one lump sum. I don't think when this was drawn up, they imagined that one person could be PM for 12 years and one could be PM for less than
fortnight,
50 days or whatever. But Liz Truss is entitled to it, so there is pressure now on her.
See, no one's going to be giving her 150,000 to go to America and deliver a speech to a lot of used car salesman in Tucson.
No, well,
So
that's
she
one
would
of her
probably
problems.
need the money. Boris could have given that money away. It would have been a great gesture. If Boris had been serious about coming back, he would have done that. Whereas I bet he's trousered it. It's already been spent on cheap Spanish wine. It's already gone, actually.
Yeah, you're obsessed with this.
I'd love to know what.
Yeah, but I had to read about this.
Yeah.
About these parties in Number 10, and they used to go out and get caseloads of this cheap Spanish wine from the supermarket round the corner. And I'm sorry, I'm sure my liver isn't in great state, but it has been ruined by better wine than that.
I'm going to find out what wine he does choose.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.
I just sort of think, this is a bit controversial thing to say, because people said pressure on Liz Truss not to take this golden handshake. If I was her, I'd take it.
I think she deserves for the bullying on the industrial scale it's been from some elements of the media and from our own MPs for the last few weeks. That poor, just from a human point of view, I think she deserves every penny. Because at the end of the day, she tried to do something she truly believed in and was different. She presented it very badly, and she's been misrepresented.
Because none of the papers have got any ideas about what she might do. They assume she'll probably just quietly melt away.
Well, yeah. Look, we have got, David, I'm giving you a warning here, 60 seconds. The Times, looking at the runners and riders, says that all of this could mean that Penny Mordaunt is the unity choice moving forward. Penny Mordaunt, who was accused, it has to be said, of not being across any of her briefs.
Yes, I know. I must say that she was in the House. She made a sort of holding statement in the House when Liz Truss went missing, and I thought she's very good. She's obviously got a very good style in the House, but you see, the problem is she's never been in the cabinet, and you really do need a heavyweight, someone who knows where the bodies are buried and can actually do that, and that's where I think there's a very limited list of people. It doesn't include Penny Mordaunt, although she'll no doubt get a good job.
Yeah, okay, look, it's fascinating to talk. It's interesting, we don't need to actually sort of look at all the individual front pages, because they're all got the same story on. So anyway, David, Liz, thank you. We'll catch up with you.